Rain was just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. He worked a regular job at a local office, living in a small apartment. Every day felt the same, with no real excitement. His mornings began with the sound of his alarm clock ringing, and his evenings ended in front of a TV, staring blankly at whatever show was on. There was nothing that really made him feel alive anymore. Sometimes he wondered what it would be like to escape from this routine, to have a life full of adventure and meaning. One evening, as Rain walked home from work, the city streets were quiet, and the sky was just beginning to darken. It was a typical evening, the kind that felt almost like a repeat of yesterday. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. His mind wandered as he walked, thinking about what could possibly make his life more interesting. Maybe a new job, a vacation somewhere far away, something to break him out of this endless cycle of monotony. But before Rain could finish his thoughts, something strange happened. He was crossing a street when a bright light appeared in the sky. At first, it looked like a star, but then it grew larger, brighter. It wasn't a plane, and it wasn't a helicopter. It was something else entirely. The light was glowing intensely, almost like it was pulling the very stars down from the sky. It was beautiful, and for a moment, Rain stood frozen in place, mesmerized by the sight. Then, in a blink of an eye, the light descended rapidly, growing bigger and more blinding. Rain shielded his eyes, and when the light faded, he found himself standing in a completely different place. Gone were the streets of his city. Instead, he was now standing in a glowing, otherworldly forest. The trees around him shimmered with a soft, silvery glow, and the air smelled fresh, like it had just rained. The sky above was a deep purple, with stars twinkling brighter than he'd ever seen. Rain's heart raced. He looked around, confused, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was he dreaming? Was this some kind of hallucination? He reached out to touch a nearby tree, feeling the coolness of its bark under his fingers. It felt real, too real. Then suddenly, he heard a voice, a soft, melodic voice that seemed to echo from every direction. "What is your wish, human? I will grant it." Rain whipped around to find the source of the voice. And there, standing in front of him, was a girl. She looked like no one he had ever seen before. Her skin glowed with a silver hue, and her hair shimmered in shades of blue, as if it had been woven from starlight. Her eyes were the most striking feature, large, radiant, and glowing a deep shade of blue. There was something otherworldly about her, something that told him she was not from this world. She looked at him calmly, as if she had been waiting for him all along. Rain couldn't believe his eyes. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. He was certain that he must have been dreaming, that he had somehow fallen asleep on the sidewalk, and was now in the middle of a bizarre dream. The girl smiled softly, her expression serene. "I am Zephy," she said, her voice smooth and soothing. "I come from a faraway world, and I have come to grant you one wish, a wish that will change everything." Rain's mind raced. "A wish? What do you mean? This has to be a dream. There's no way this is real." But Zephy didn't seem fazed by his confusion. She nodded slowly, her eyes sparkling with an ancient knowledge. "This is real, human. You are not dreaming. I am from a place beyond your understanding, a place where we have the power to fulfill the deepest desires of beings like you. It is a tradition of our kind to grant one wish to a human every 1,000 years. This time, you are the chosen one." Rain felt a chill run down his spine. Chosen? A wish. Everything she was saying felt impossible. His logical mind screamed that it couldn't be true. Yet the scene around him was so vivid, so real, that he couldn't dismiss it. He glanced around, taking in the strange forest, the glowing sky, and the sense of calm that seemed to hang in the air. "Wait," Rain said, still trying to grasp the situation. "Why me? Why now?" Zephy's expression softened, as though she understood his confusion. Every 1,000 years, the universe chooses one human whose heart and mind are ready for change. You are that person. Your wish can be anything. Anything at all. She held out her hand toward him, her fingers glowing faintly. I have the power to make your deepest desire come true. Rain looked at her hand, feeling a strange pull in his chest. Could it really be true? Could he ask for something impossible, something that would change his entire life? The thought was almost overwhelming. He had always dreamed of living a life full of excitement, a life where he wasn't just going through the motions. He could ask for fame, for wealth, or maybe even for power. The possibilities felt endless, but then something in his gut told him that there was more to this than just a simple wish. Rain took a cautious step forward. If I can ask for anything, what's the catch? What's the price? At that, Zeffie's expression turned serious, and the air around them seemed to shift, becoming heavier, more intense. Every wish has a price, human. It may not be something you can see at first, but it will always have consequences. You will not be able to make your wish without facing the challenges that come with it. The universe will not grant a wish without testing the one who desires it. Rain's heart skipped a beat. He had heard stories of wishes gone wrong, of people who had asked for too much and lost everything. Was this his chance to change his life forever? Or was it a trap, something he should be cautious about? The idea of asking for something powerful felt dangerous, but the temptation was undeniable. Zeffie continued, her voice calm yet firm. You have 1 hour to decide. In that time, think carefully. Once you make your choice, there is no turning back. Rain stood there, unsure of what to do. The possibilities swirled in his mind, but so did the fear of making the wrong choice. What if he asked for something that caused him more pain than happiness? What if the consequences of his wish were worse than the life he had now? As the minutes ticked by, Rain's mind raced. He thought of all the things he could ask for. The wealth, the fame, the adventures. The life he had always dreamed of. But was that what he truly wanted? Or was there something more, something deeper he needed? Zeffie stood silently, watching him, waiting for him to make his decision. Her eyes never left his, as if she could see right through him, into the very core of his soul. Rain took a deep breath, trying to clear his thoughts. He realized that this was no ordinary decision. This was the kind of choice that could change everything. I need more time, Rain said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. Zeffie nodded, as if she had expected that response. I will give you the time you need. But remember, the clock is ticking. And with that, Rain was left alone in the glowing forest, standing between the possibility of a dream come true and the fear of an unknown cost. Rain stood in the glowing forest, feeling the weight of Zeffie's words pressing down on him. The price of a wish, he repeated to himself. The words echoed in his mind like a warning. He had heard tales of wishes gone wrong. Stories of people who had asked for too much and paid the ultimate price. His heart was racing. What if he made the wrong choice? What if his wish came with consequences he couldn't even imagine? The forest around him seemed to close in, its shimmering trees and soft purple sky now feeling distant and almost eerie. Zeffie stood still before him, her gaze unwavering, her expression calm. She had told him to think carefully, that his wish would not come without a cost. But what did that really mean? Could he trust her? Could he trust this strange, magical world he had been pulled into? Zeffie's voice broke through his thoughts. I understand that you're hesitant, but you must make your decision soon. Time is not something we can control. She spoke so calmly, but Rain couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away from him faster than he realized. He glanced around, his eyes darting to the glowing trees and distant stars, and he felt completely out of place. He had been an ordinary man in an ordinary life. Now he was standing in a world that was beyond anything he had ever known, surrounded by mystery and power. The possibilities of what he could wish for were endless. Power, wealth, love, adventure. There was so much he could ask for. But what did he truly want? What was worth the price? What is the price, Zeffie? Rain asked, his voice trembling slightly. He needed answers before he could make such a life-changing decision. He had to know what he was getting himself into. Zeffie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step closer to him, her silver skin glowing softly in the dim light. "The price will vary," she said. "It may not be something you see right away, but every wish changes the balance of the world. When you ask for something, something else must give." Rain frowned, trying to make sense of her cryptic words. "What do you mean by that? What must give?" Zeffie's gaze grew distant, as though she were looking far beyond the forest, beyond the stars. "The universe is not a place where everything can be taken without consequence. If you gain something, you will lose something else. That is the law of balance." Rain's mind spun as he tried to understand what she was saying. If he wished for something, anything, it would come at a cost, something he would lose or have to sacrifice. But how could he know what that sacrifice would be? Would he lose something precious to him? Would the price be too high? A million questions flooded his mind, but he didn't know where to begin. His heart wanted adventure, a new life, something different from the one he had known. But now it felt as though there was a dark shadow hanging over him, warning him to be careful, to think twice. Could he live with the consequences of his wish? Was he ready to pay whatever price the universe would demand? Zeffie's voice brought him back to the moment. "Take your time, human. The decision is yours. But know this, once you choose, there is no going back." The words hung in the air like a final warning. Once he made his wish, it would be set in motion. There would be no turning back, no undoing it. Whatever consequences came with his choice would be his to face. Rain took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He glanced up at the stars above, their light twinkling softly in the strange purple sky. Everything felt so surreal, as though he was standing on the edge of a dream that could slip away at any moment. But could he really walk away from this opportunity? Could he go back to his old life, the one filled with endless routines and unfulfilled desires? He thought about the life he had lived so far. It was comfortable, but empty. He had a steady job, a roof over his head, and a predictable future. But something was always missing. Adventure, excitement, purpose. The thought of changing his life forever, of becoming someone more, was irresistible. He could be anyone. He could do anything. But there was that nagging feeling again. The price. What would he lose if he made the wrong choice? Rain's gaze shifted back to Zeffie, who stood there waiting patiently. Her calm demeanor only made his internal turmoil worse. How could someone be so sure about their power? How could she remain so calm when she was offering him a wish that could change everything? He couldn't help but feel that there was more to this than she was letting on. "What happens if I don't make a wish?" he asked, suddenly unsure about his next step. "What if I walk away?" Zeffie's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something, maybe sadness, maybe understanding, in her eyes. "If you choose not to make a wish, you will return to your life. Nothing will change. You will go back to being the man you were, living the life you know." Rain felt a pang in his chest. That wasn't what he wanted. He didn't want to go back to the same old, same old. He had asked for something different, something more. But the fear of what he might lose held him back. "But I will never know what could have been," Rain whispered to himself, realizing the truth. He would always wonder what would have happened if he had chosen differently, if he had taken the chance. Zeffie nodded, as though she could hear his thoughts. "That is true. The price of choosing to do nothing is the knowledge that you will never know what could have been. But sometimes that is the hardest price to pay." The silence stretched between them. Rain thought back to the life he had lived. It wasn't a bad life. It was just ordinary, safe. But wasn't there more out there? Couldn't he reach for something greater, something that might bring him the fulfillment he craved? He stared at Zeffie, searching her face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was all some elaborate trick. But there was nothing. She seemed genuine, even though her power was beyond anything he could understand. Finally, he spoke. "I need to know. What's the worst price I could pay? Zephy didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step back, her eyes locking onto his. The worst price, she repeated, as though considering the question carefully. It depends on what you wish for. The more you ask for, the greater the cost. Some have lost their loved ones. Others have lost their freedom. And some have lost their very souls, unable to live with the weight of their choices. Rain's heart pounded in his chest. Losing loved ones, losing freedom, losing his soul. The thought of any of those consequences made his stomach twist in fear. He had to make the right choice. This was more than just a wish. It was a test of his character, of what kind of person he wanted to be. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of price, he said quietly, looking down at the ground, his mind racing. How can I be sure that I'm making the right choice? Zephy stepped closer to him, her voice softer now. You can never be sure, Rain, but sometimes we must take risks to find out who we truly are. You may lose something, yes, but you may also gain something greater than you ever imagined. Rain closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words sink in. The price would be real, no matter what he wished for. But perhaps it was worth it. Perhaps the risk was what made it worth pursuing. He didn't want to spend his life wondering what could have been. He wanted to take that leap, to embrace whatever came his way. With a deep breath, Rain opened his eyes, locking onto Zephy's calm gaze. I've decided. Zephy smiled, a small but knowing smile. Then speak your wish, and let the universe hear it. But remember, once you ask, there is no going back. Rain took one last look at the glowing forest around him. His heart raced as he made his decision. The price would be steep, but the potential to change his life was worth it. With a steady voice, he finally spoke. I wish for a life full of adventure. I want to experience everything the world has to offer, to live without limits. Zephy's eyes sparkled, and for the briefest moment, Rain felt a sense of peace. The decision had been made. Rain's heart beat like a drum in his chest as he stood before Zephy, ready to make his wish. The words hung in the air between them like a promise, an invitation to change his life forever. He had chosen to seek adventure, to experience everything the world had to offer, to live without limits. But as the words left his mouth, something deep within him stirred, something darker. Power. The temptation of power. Zephy's calm smile remained unchanged as she listened to his wish. She didn't react immediately, her eyes glinting with an ancient understanding. A life full of adventure, she repeated softly, almost as if savoring the words. You have chosen a path that will lead you to many great things, Rain. But be warned, adventure is not always as glamorous as it seems. Rain looked at her, trying to keep his resolve strong. He had made his decision. He wanted excitement, challenges, and to live a life full of purpose. That was his wish, and nothing was going to change that. He had always been drawn to the idea of stepping out of his comfort zone, of breaking free from the boring, repetitive life he had always known. This was his chance to make it all happen. But as Zephy's words echoed in his mind, a new thought emerged. What if he could ask for more? What if adventure could come with power, true power, the kind of power that could bend the world to his will? Could he take his wish further? Could he become more than just a man seeking thrills? Could he control the world around him? The thought came to him so suddenly that it almost startled him. His chest tightened as his mind raced. What if his adventure wasn't just about traveling the world or experiencing new things? What if he could change the world itself? What if he could have power, real power, at his fingertips? He had always felt small, ordinary, invisible in a world full of bigger, stronger people. But what if that could change? Zephy, Rain said, his voice shaking slightly. What if I wanted more? What if I wanted the power to shape my own destiny, to make the world bend to my will? Can I ask for that? Zephy's eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze more intense than before. She had been waiting for this. She had known that the temptation of power would eventually take hold of him. Power, Rain is a dangerous thing. It can lead you to greatness, but it can also destroy you. The more you take, the more you lose. You will change in ways you cannot predict. And once you have power, it is difficult to walk away from it. Rain felt a cold shiver run down his spine. But at the same time, a part of him was excited, drawn to the idea of power. The power to control, to command, to be in charge of his own life and others. He could be more than he had ever dreamed. This was his chance to escape his ordinary life and become someone who mattered. He could change everything. I understand the risks, Rain said, trying to push the fear down. But what if I can handle it? What if I'm the one who can use power for good? I want to feel unstoppable. I want to change the world. Zephy was silent for a moment, and the air around them seemed to grow heavier. The soft glow of the forest dimmed, and the stars above flickered as if they, too, were waiting for her answer. Finally, she spoke again, her voice low and serious. Power is not something that can be controlled easily, Rain. It feeds on desire, and desire can twist you. There are many who have sought power only to be consumed by it. You must decide if you are willing to pay the price for that kind of strength. Her words cut deep, and Rain felt a flicker of doubt in his heart. But the temptation was still there. It burned inside him, urging him to go further, to ask for more. He couldn't ignore it. He had always felt small, and now here was his chance to become someone who could change the world, to become someone who wouldn't be ignored. What if I can control it? He asked, his voice more firm now. What if I'm strong enough to handle the power and use it wisely? Zephy studied him carefully, her eyes almost unreadable. You may believe that now, but power has a way of changing you. It makes you question your morality, your beliefs, even your identity. What you think is right may not be what is right. Once you start, you may not be able to stop. Rain's thoughts spun in a whirlwind. He had always wanted more excitement, more meaning, more significance. Power could give him that. It could give him the control he had always craved. The world was full of so many obstacles, so many people telling him what to do. But with power, he could be free of all of that. He could bend reality to his will. No one could stop him. He looked into Zephy's eyes, trying to find any trace of doubt or hesitation in her words. But all he saw was truth, a truth he was unwilling to ignore. Power could make him everything he had ever dreamed of. I don't want to be ordinary anymore, Rain said quietly, almost to himself. I don't want to be powerless. Zephy's expression softened for a moment, as if she understood his pain. I can give you the power you seek, Rain, she said gently. But be prepared. The world will change around you, and so will you. Power will change you in ways you cannot predict. It may give you everything you've ever wanted, but it will also take things from you. Things you might not be willing to lose. Rain stood still, the weight of her words sinking in. Was he truly ready for the consequences of his choice? Could he live with the changes power would bring? Could he live with the cost? But in that moment, the fear inside him faded, replaced by the burning desire for something more. He wanted to be free. He wanted to be the one in control. He couldn't stand being weak, being overlooked. The temptation of power was too strong. I want the power to change everything, Rain declared, his voice steady. I want the strength to shape my own future and the world around me. Zephy didn't say anything at first. She simply nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and understanding. Very well, she said softly. You will have the power you seek. But remember, Rain, the price will be high. You may lose yourself in the process. Without another word, Zephy raised her hand toward him, and a wave of energy surged through the air. It was like nothing Rain had ever felt before. Pure, raw energy, coursing through him, filling him with a sense of power that made his heart race. It was as if the entire universe had opened up to him, offering him the chance to command everything he had ever wanted. Rain gasped, feeling the power settle deep within him. He could feel it, the surge of energy, the strength, the control. It was intoxicating. For a moment, he felt invincible. He was no longer the ordinary man he had been. He was someone else now, someone with power. "Now you are ready," Zephy said quietly. "But remember, Rain, the temptation of power is not easily resisted. You will be tested, and you will have to decide how to use it." Rain stood there, his mind reeling with the possibilities. He could do anything now. The world was his to control. But as the rush of power began to settle, a small, lingering doubt remained in the back of his mind. What would it cost him? What would he lose along the way? But for now, the power was his, and nothing else mattered. The power surged inside of Rain, stronger than he had ever imagined. It was as though every part of him had been touched by something greater, something far beyond his understanding. He could feel it in his fingertips, in the air around him, and deep within his chest. It was as if the entire universe was now at his command, waiting for him to shape it. But as the energy settled, a strange feeling washed over him. For the first time, he didn't feel invincible. He felt uncertain. The weight of the power inside him seemed to grow heavier with every passing second. The excitement of having control began to fade, replaced by the realization that power came with responsibility. Responsibility he wasn't sure he was ready for. Rain looked at Zephy, who stood silently before him, her expression unreadable. She had given him the power he sought, but she hadn't warned him what would happen next. He had asked for adventure, but now, with the power to change everything, he realized that adventure came at a cost. The world was no longer the same. He was no longer the same. But then, something in his gut told him that there was more to this than just a simple wish. Rain took a cautious step forward. "If I can ask for anything, what's the catch? What's the price?" At that, Zephy's expression turned serious, and the air around them seemed to shift, becoming heavier, more intense. "Every wish has a price, human. It may not be something you can see at first, but it will always have consequences. You will not be able to make your wish without facing the challenges that come with it. The universe will not grant a wish without testing the one who desires it." Rain's heart skipped a beat. He had heard stories of wishes gone wrong, of people who had asked for too much and lost everything. Was this his chance to change his life forever? Or was it a trap, something he should be cautious about? The idea of asking for something powerful felt dangerous, but the temptation was undeniable. Zephy continued, her voice calm yet firm. "You have 1 hour to decide. In that time, think carefully. Once you make your choice, there is no turning back." Rain stood there, unsure of what to do. The possibilities swirled in his mind, but so did the fear of making the wrong choice. What if he asked for something that caused him more pain than happiness? What if the consequences of his wish were worse than the life he had now? As the minutes ticked by, Rain's mind raced. He thought of all the things he could ask for. The wealth, the fame, the adventures, the life he had always dreamed of. But was that what he truly wanted? Or was there something more, something deeper he needed? Zephy stood silently, watching him, waiting for him to make his decision. Her eyes never left his, as if she could see right through him, into the very core of his soul. Rain took a deep breath, trying to clear his thoughts. He realized that this was no ordinary decision. This was the kind of choice that could change everything. "I need more time," Rain said, his voice shaking with uncertainty. Zephy nodded, as if she had expected that response. "I will give you the time you need. But remember, the clock is ticking." And with that, Rain was left alone in the glowing forest, standing between the possibility of a dream come true and the fear of an unknown cost. Rain stood in the glowing forest, feeling the weight of Zephy's words pressing down on him. "The price of a wish," he repeated to himself. The words echoed in his mind like a warning. He had heard tales of wishes gone wrong, stories of people who had asked for too much and paid the ultimate price. His heart was racing. What if he made the wrong choice? What if his wish came with consequences he couldn't even imagine? The forest around him seemed to close in, its shimmering trees and soft purple sky now feeling distant and almost eerie. Zephy stood still before him, her gaze unwavering, her expression calm. She had told him to think carefully, that his wish would not come without a cost. But what did that really mean? Could he trust her? Could he trust this strange, magical world he had been pulled into? Zephy's voice broke through his thoughts. I understand that you're hesitant, but you must make your decision soon. Time is not something we can control. She spoke so calmly, but Rain couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away from him faster than he realized. He glanced around, his eyes darting to the glowing trees and distant stars, and he felt completely out of place. He had been an ordinary man in an ordinary life. Now he was standing in a world that was beyond anything he had ever known, surrounded by mystery and power. The possibilities of what he could wish for were endless. Power, wealth, love, adventure. There was so much he could ask for. But what did he truly want? What was worth the price? What is the price, Zephy? Rain asked, his voice trembling slightly. He needed answers before he could make such a life-changing decision. He had to know what he was getting himself into. Zephy didn't answer immediately. Instead, she took a step closer to him, her silver skin glowing softly in the dim light. The price will vary, she said. It may not be something you see right away, but every wish changes the balance of the world. When you ask for something, something else must give. Zephy, Rain said, his voice shaky. I feel different. I can feel the power, but it's not what I thought it would be. It's not just about adventure anymore. It's more than that. Zephy nodded, her eyes softening with a mixture of understanding and sadness. You have made your choice, Rain, and now you must live with it. Power is not simply a tool to be used for personal gain. It is a force that shapes everything around you. It will change you in ways you cannot foresee. And once you begin to use it, there is no going back. Rain felt a knot form in his stomach. He had asked for power, but he hadn't fully understood what that meant. What would it take from him? What would he lose in the process? The answers weren't clear, and that uncertainty gnawed at him. For a moment, Rain closed his eyes, trying to steady his thoughts. The world around him felt distant, almost unreal. The forest seemed to hum with the energy of the power he now possessed, but it was a hum that didn't feel comforting. It was alien, foreign, like a force that wanted to take over, to change him into something he wasn't sure he could control. What do I do now? Rain asked, his voice filled with doubt. I've been given the power, but I don't know how to use it. I don't know what it's supposed to mean. Zephy took a step forward, her movements graceful, as if she were floating just above the ground. The power will reveal itself to you, Rain. It will call to you when the time is right. But remember, with every choice comes a consequence. You can use this power for good, to shape the world in ways that benefit others. Or you can use it for your own desires, to bend the world to your will. But be careful. Once you begin to use it, the line between good and bad becomes blurry. The thought hit Rain hard. He had never imagined that the world he sought to control would be so complicated. It wasn't just about getting what he wanted anymore. The idea of shaping the world, of changing people's lives, came with its own moral dilemmas. Would he use his power to make the world a better place, or would he be tempted to use it for selfish reasons? His mind raced as he thought about the possibilities. He could do so much with this power. He could fix the mistakes of his past, rewrite his future, and even change the lives of those around him. But there was a darker side to it, too. What if he began to lose himself in the process? What if his desire for more became all-consuming, leading him down a path he couldn't return from? As Zephy's words echoed in his mind, Rain felt a pull deep within him. He could feel the power reaching out, beckoning him to use it. The temptation was overwhelming, and for the first time, he realized just how easy it would be to fall into the trap of selfishness. What if he became the kind of person he had always despised, the kind who used others for their own gain? I'm not sure I can do this, Rain admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I knew what I wanted, but now it feels like too much. What if I'm not the right person to hold this kind of power? Zeffie's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human, vulnerable. The power chooses the person, Rain. It does not care about your past or your mistakes, but you must choose what to do with it. The power itself is neutral. It is your choices that will determine what kind of person you become. Rain looked down at his hands, the power still thrumming through his fingertips. It felt like he was holding the very fabric of the universe, yet he couldn't shake the fear that he might lose control of it. What if he didn't make the right choices? What if he used the power for the wrong reasons? The idea of becoming someone he didn't recognize terrified him. What happens if I use it wrong? Rain asked, the fear in his voice unmistakable. What if I lose myself in the process? Zeffie's eyes darkened, and for a brief moment, Rain saw something ancient in her gaze, something that spoke of countless others who had made the same choice he was making now. There are those who have used power and been consumed by it. They lose their humanity, their compassion, and in the end, they become mere shadows of what they once were. Power has a way of stripping you of everything that matters, Rain. If you aren't careful, it will change you into someone you can't recognize. The weight of her words hit him like a wave. He had been so focused on the idea of power, so eager to escape his ordinary life, that he hadn't fully considered the consequences. What if he lost himself? What if his desire for control destroyed everything he cared about? For a long time, there was silence between them. Rain stood frozen, his mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. The power inside him still pulsed, still called to him, but now it felt like a burden. Could he truly handle it? Could he use it for good? Or would he become just another person who had been consumed by the very thing they sought? Zeffie finally spoke, her voice low and steady. The choice is yours, Rain. You can use the power to change the world, to help others, to make things right. But you must understand that the choices you make will shape your future. The consequences will follow you, no matter where you go. Rain took a deep breath, his mind slowly beginning to clear. The path before him wasn't easy, and there was no clear answer. But one thing was certain. The choice he made now would change everything. There would be no turning back. His decision would define who he became, and he could either rise above the temptation of power or fall into its dark embrace. I don't know what's right anymore, Rain admitted, his voice raw with emotion. But I know I can't walk away. I have to choose. I have to live with the consequences. Zeffie nodded, her expression unreadable once again. That is the first step, Rain. You have accepted that the choices you make matter. Now you must decide who you want to be. The power is yours, but what you do with it is up to you. Rain looked out at the world around him, the forest glowing with an otherworldly light. The power surged within him, urging him to act, to take control. But now, for the first time, he understood that power was not just a tool, it was a test, and the choice he made would define him forever. With a deep breath, Rain made his decision. He couldn't walk away from this. He had already come too far. The power was his, and now it was up to him to choose how to use it. Rain's mind spun as he stood on the edge of a new world, one where everything felt within his reach. The power within him was undeniable, like a storm ready to unleash its fury. He had felt its surge, its strength. He had made the choice to embrace it, to shape his own future, to take control of his destiny. But now, as the quiet stillness of the forest surrounded him, he began to wonder if he had truly understood what he had set in motion. Power was intoxicating. It was like nothing Rain had ever felt before. It filled his body, made him feel stronger, more capable. He could sense everything around him in a way that was almost supernatural. He could feel the pulse of life in the trees, the movement of every animal in the distance. even the tiny flicker of the stars above. It was as if the world itself was alive under his touch. He could change it. He could reshape it. The possibilities seemed endless, and for a moment, it felt like the world was his to command. But the excitement was fading, slowly being replaced by something else. Unease, a strange, nagging feeling that something was wrong. The power had come so easily, so suddenly, and now it seemed almost too much to bear. He had wanted control, but now, he couldn't help but wonder if he had bitten off more than he could chew. Was this what he had wanted all along, or had he been blinded by the promise of something greater? "Zephy?" Rain asked, his voice uncertain. "I feel different, but it's not just the power, it's something else. I can't explain it. Something's changing inside me." Zephy, who had remained silent beside him, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of something more, something older, something more knowing. "That is the price of power, Rain, the price you have to pay for what you've chosen. Power doesn't come freely, and it doesn't come without consequences. Every choice you make, every action you take, will have its price, and sooner or later, the true cost will reveal itself to you." Rain turned to face her, his mind racing. "What do you mean?" "I knew there would be challenges, but I didn't think there would be this. I thought I could handle it. I thought I knew what I was getting into." Zephy's gaze softened as she looked at him, her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. "The power has already begun to change you, Rain. It changes everyone who takes it. It begins in small ways, and at first you may not notice it. But eventually you will. You will feel it in your heart, in your mind, in the way you see the world. And you will have to decide if the price is worth paying."